Do you know what? Could you define toxic masculinity? The concept of toxic masculinity. Don't worry, man, because if I'd have asked myself this question yesterday morning, I wouldn't have been able to answer either. But give me your best answer.
I don't know. This type of guy that is always telling his adventures or his achievements with the
Okay.
and he's always like treating badly the women.
Okay, so yeah, treating women badly, like misogynistic, right?
Mhm.
Toxic masculinity. Okay, I get you. Why? Because something happened to me yesterday, as you well know, actually, which made me question: Am I toxic? Am I a toxic male? Okay, let me explain, friends. Let me explain before you all just tune out and hate me. Good morning, Alone Strong, joining us in the chat. Guys, again, if you want to join us in the chat, go to twitch.tv, type in Professional Bohemian, you'll find me. Societal expectations put on men that aren't good for them, says Min. Okay, good definition. I would say maybe a little bit, arguing the same thing as Natch, but probably a little bit more succinct there. Okay, so toxic masculinity, I had no idea. If someone asked me yesterday to define toxic masculinity, I would have said, I don't know, a certain amount of misogyny, I guess. So I did some research. Why? What happened to me yesterday? So, I've been operating under the assumption, as most of you know, I took a 6-week break from the radio because I had an accident on my scooter. It still sounds dumb to say. But I had an accident on my scooter. The doctor told me I'd broken a rib. And it laid me out for 6 weeks. And apart from that, then in my personal life, there's been a lot of things that have gone on to kind of make me question who I am. Like, am I, just, I don't want to go into too many details because, I'm trying to protect someone who hasn't done a very good job of protecting me, honestly. But anyway, the last 6 months have been difficult for me personally. And, it's felt like an assault on my self-esteem. And then this accident was like the cherry on the cake, right? So I broke a rib, and it laid me out completely for 6 weeks. And then I'm talking to people through that baja, and like Natch, for example, he says, "Yeah, my elderly mother broke 3 ribs, and it was very painful." And I'm thinking, I've broken a rib, just one. And I can't move. So it kind of framed this accident for me as like, I don't think I'm a tough guy, Natch. I never thought I was a tough guy. But, someone really determined. I've always considered myself really determined and maybe not tough, but, pretty high pain threshold and whatnot. So the idea of me breaking a rib and it kind of being this thing that's put my life on hold was kind of difficult for me to swallow. That mixed with my own personal dramas relationship-wise. So I went for the MRI results yesterday, and apparently I broke 6 ribs. 6 ribs. And it completely reframed the whole accident for me in my brain. Like, in that moment when the doctor told me that, he did actually more for me than he'd done in the last 2 months. Because all of a sudden it went from I fell off my scooter, broke a rib, and couldn't do anything. Like, I fell off my scooter, broke 6 ribs, got back on the scooter, and rode to work. And here's the thing. I will, I'll be honest. The idea of me going from considering myself a little softer than I thought I was to feeling, robust again, made me feel really good. And I told people this in the office as soon as I came back, because the results session wasn't that long. Came right back into the office, told Natch. I feel like Natch identified with how I was feeling in that moment. I've told Fitz, like, I completely understand how you feel. Told other female colleagues, Natch. They didn't get it. Andrea, for example, she was like, "This is terrible. You could sue. You could have lost your life." I'm like, dude, don't you get it? I feel like a man again. And that sounds probably if you're a female listener, or maybe you're a more enlightened man than I am, you're probably thinking, well, that's a really weird takeaway from that. You should be maybe disgusted that they didn't find those breaks earlier. That you didn't spend time in hospital instead of going home. You could have punctured a lung. Maybe that's your thought. My immediate thought was, damn, thank God, I'm not as soft as my, as my psyche was telling me that I was. When I say that it was a real psychological struggle for me, the baja, that was a big part of it. What was going on in my personal life, as well as the break, all compounded to make me feel like less. I always say to you, know your worth, and then add tax. Well, it made me completely the relationship issues I was having, and then this accident and what it did to my body really made me reconsider my own worth. Natch, my question, is that toxic masculinity? Because I kind of think it maybe is. Okay, so I did a little research, man. I did a little research on the webpage. Let me see. Verywellmind.com. Toxic masculinity definition and examples. Toxic masculinity refers to the notion that some people's idea of manliness perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression. Okay, I would say immediately that takes me out of the running as a toxic male, because I'm none of those things. Arguably, in the past, I was quite an aggressive young person, but as an adult, that's definitely not the case. Toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for men. This is kind of going back to what Min was saying earlier. Toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for men to behave in a certain way, and it's likely to affect all boys and men in some fashion. Now we start kind of scraping up my my issue here. Is what I experienced there just masculinity? What makes it toxic? Is it unhealthy? It's a question, open question for you guys also in the chat. Let me know live, twitch.tv/professional bohemian. Let's see what people are saying. JM Romanova says, not too bad. You have 12. I broke 6 of them. But it's not a big deal. You've got 12. Stop moaning. I think, do we have more than 12 ribs? I know, well, the doctor said I broke from 2 to 8 on one side. I don't know what that means. Not clever enough. Not a doctor. I don't know where 2 to 8 is. Let's see. The good thing that these kind of injuries is that you only have to take a break and rest. At least your lung wasn't injured too, so think about the positive part of everything. Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was very grateful that the accident wasn't more serious. It was actually a lot more serious than I thought it was. The doctor kind of, made no secret about that yesterday. He says, look, you had a really, really bad accident, even worse than we originally thought. So, you were very lucky. And be careful on that patinette, which I haven't touched since, by the way. Pedro says, now I can call you to swim with me across the ocean, Rob. It completely changed my mind about you. Welcome to the club. Thank you. Floating ribs don't count. Okay. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you. Okay, floating ribs don't count. Floating ribs are the ribs that aren't attached to, the spine or whatever, I think. So yeah, is that toxic masculinity? Is that just masculinity? I'm sure women face similar pressures about, maybe certain beauty standards or I mean, what would be the contrary to that? Like, I know, for example, we had her here in the studio, Claire. Not the most emotionally driven person. She's quite logical. She's quite, did she feel pressure to be more emotionally tuned in? Is that kind of, what does toxic femininity look like? Is toxic femininity even a thing? And I will be honest, the pressure that I put on myself over that period, not only because of my relationship issues, but because of my health issues, made me feel less like a man. Should it have? Probably not, right? Is that toxic masculinity? Interesting. Let's continue reading about this concept of toxic masculinity. This idea that men need to act tough and avoid showing all emotions can be harmful to their mental health and can have serious consequences for society, which is how it became known as toxic masculinity. So a few definitions here. Anti-femininity. I don't think this applies to me. I wouldn't consider myself anti-feminine in the slightest. This involves the idea that men should reject anything that is considered to be feminine, such as showing emotions or accepting help. Dude, I've seen so much reality TV at this point. It's impossible. It's impossible for me not to be in tune with that part of myself, you know. Let's see. Power. This is the assumption that men must work towards obtaining power and status, social and financial, so they can gain the respect of others. I don't know if that applies to me either. You know what I mean? Maybe to a certain extent, I don't know. And then toughness is the last one. This is the notion that men should be physically strong, emotionally callous, and behave aggressive. So yeah, interesting. So this was what was occupying my mind last night. If you ever feel bad, Natch, about like jaleo and kasai and kids' birthdays, remember your friend Rob, who sits at home and whose mind goes to the weirdest things. No potholes in the ocean, says Min. I suppose toxic masculinity would be the expectation that you just get up after an accident with 6 broken ribs and ride to the office. Hoo-ha! Dude, I can't help it. Makes me feel good about myself. What do you want me to say? I don't know if it applies to being happy. You were down because of much bigger accident than initially thought. Yeah, true. Doubting oneself after a breakup or similar emotional distressing situations is logical, I think. Difference might be that women are expected to talk it out, but men are expected to keep it to themselves. Yeah. Why is that, man? Because you know what? Today's unpopular opinion was going to be men should compliment each other more. But I know what's going to happen if I put that. Everyone is going to say, yes, men should compliment each other more. But then experiencing compliments as a man from another man, I know how weird it feels. Do you know what I mean about that, Natch? It feels odd. Like my friend Pete Swindon, who used to work here. Oh, very complimentary. I like his shoes. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to react to that? Thanks. And I've tried doing it as well. I tried doing it to Fitz. So I came in while I was on Baja. I came in to see everybody. Went for a coffee with Fitz. Said, "Hey, Fitz, nice jacket." And he just looked at me like, "What's wrong with you?" So it's a complex issue, and I don't know how to properly phrase that in a way that makes it as contentious as it actually is. And it's odd, and and I have this splinter in my mind of masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? You know, what side of manliness is not considered toxic? Like if we can clearly define toxic masculinity as we can, what is positive masculinity? I mean, define positive masculinity to me, Natch. Do you know what I mean? Because here, in pretty much every source where I read about toxic masculinity, they define it as the antithesis of being emotionally connected, right? Being cerebral and emotionally kind of accessible. But they define those as feminine traits. So what is positive masculinity? This is a question for me that I'm going to ruminate on, and we are going to do a show or a series of shows about that, because I find it a fascinating subject. As a man in my middle age, like I thought I was a lot more enlightened than I actually am until yesterday. I got that news, and it made me feel great, quite irrationally so, because maybe I should have been more kind of thinking, God, I could have killed myself. But no, my first thought, my lizard brain, first thing it said was, "Wow, you know, you're not as soft as you thought. Congratulations, you've earned a beer." Do you know what I mean? And as I sit here now, my ribs still a little sore, my back still a little sore. The pain is hitting me different. You know what I mean? It's less of a distraction and, you know, perhaps more of a badge of honor. Is that toxic masculinity? Is that just masculinity? Is that just stupidity? I honestly have no idea. Hence why I pose it to you guys. And remember, when you write in the chat, there is no right or wrong answers. I am not a gatekeeper of any kind of truth. I don't know. I'm the biggest idiot here. I'm the one that they let do the talking. You know what I mean? Consider that. But these are questions I think worth asking. You know what I mean? My TikTok recently has become kind of this never-ending circle of men complaining about being marginalized by women, by society. And I don't know about you, Natch. I don't feel the slightest bit persecuted as a man. Yeah, I wonder how many other people are seeing those posts. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting subject. What does it actually mean nowadays to be a man? You know, we can say what are the bad qualities about man, this toughness, this callousness, a lack of emotion. But what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a person? You know what I mean? In a world where kind of gender seems to be some kind of a spectrum. You know what I mean? You know, it's interesting questions, man, and questions that I am sadly not qualified enough to answer. But we'll talk about this more in the future because I do find it fascinating. We've spent so much time talking about AI. Do you know what I mean? Oh my God, Natch, have I really spent all this time talking about this? I didn't even enter in the news today. I'm sorry, guys. Let's see. Good morning, Bridge. How you doing? Now, seriously, to the extent that your belief that breaking one rib only made you feel less of a man, that might be toxic masculinity to yourself. So maybe, Rob. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because, you know, I mean, I felt less tough. You know what I mean? That kind of feeling of I lost my physical agency. And now I'm, you know what I mean? Let's face it, that accident happened because of my own stupidity. I mean, what am I doing as a 40-something-year-old man? Riding around on an electric scooter. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sue the ayuntamiento because it's my stupid fault. You know? And not only that, then the personal things that I've been going through all compounded to make me reassess the value in which I had of myself. And then understanding that, no, actually, this was a more serious accident than you thought it was. Immediately reframed a lot of what's happened over the last 2 months and made me feel better. And maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe breaking one rib only was enough. You know? Interesting. You know, I'm a man that believes he knows himself quite well. Then weird stuff like this happens and makes me realize, well, actually, no, you don't know yourself as well as you thought. And guys, I'm going to keep it real with you guys. You know what I mean? I'm going to keep it real. So if it happens to me and, you know, I want to share it with you. Because at the end of the day, we're all a community here. Okay, let's continue. I think positive masculinity isn't really a thing because the ideal situation isn't an ideal man, but an ideal person that isn't bound to gender-based expectations. Wow. Can we get Min a ProBoh approved?
ProBoh approved.
Maybe positive or non-toxic masculinity or non-toxic femininity. Maybe they aren't things. Maybe you're just a good person. You know? That's a really great point. No, Rob, the pain of a broken rib is excruciating. Wow, telling me. All right, let's very quickly go to this unpopular opinion.